I'm going to go ahead with the meeting beginning ritual.
起立，面向佛堂，参加三鞠躬、一鞠躬、再鞠躬、三鞠躬，参加各位点传是一鞠躬，开班一鞠躬，请坐下。Please be seated.
Good morning or afternoon or evening, everyone, and welcome to our July the 29th installment of our online Tao study group. You're going to notice the dates on my presentation say the 22nd because we had a short meeting last week that I forgot was going to be a short meeting, and so I just drop-kicked this presentation over to this morning. Like I said, while we were chit-chatting, I think this one's a good one. It's a recurring topic for me, actually, one that is of tremendous importance to me personally, and a topic that I think is important for each of us as we wander down this path that we call living. One of the differentiating factors of the Iguan Dao spiritual path that sets us apart from any other spiritual tradition that I've encountered in my life, and I've encountered a bunch of them, is that in the Iguan Dao spiritual path, individual accountability is absolutely paramount. Individual responsibility is an expectation, and individual action is essential. There are so many spiritual traditions, so many emerging belief systems out there, particularly in what I like to refer to as the church of what's happening now, that in one way or another essentially say, visualize what you want, think about what you want, and it'll materialize in front of you. And the world is full of people, actually, who are engaging in that practice, hoping to become millionaires, win the lottery, get a new house, whatever, who are still waiting to become millionaires or win the lottery or get a new house or whatever. And for as long as their sole motivation in that activity is to visualize and wish for what they want, they are going to wait until either they die or they change their minds. The importance of actually moving towards a goal cannot be overstated. I want to be careful because I actually get a little emotional about this particular topic, and I don't want to offend anybody. So let me see if I can say this gently. We all have wishes, wants, and desires. But if our wishes and wants and desires remain only wishes, wants, and desires, that is, if we do not actually get off the couch and start taking some kind of definitive, purposeful action towards the accomplishment of the wishes and wants and desires, they remain forever ethereal. It is absolutely the truth that all of us and all of the myriad things and everything that we ever wanted originate in Wuji, the void. The moment before the thought congeals, before the wish becomes solid, before the substance emerges. That aspect of the Tao is a firm truth. But the way things work in this life is that if you want a new house, either you'd better know how to nail some sticks together, or you better know somebody who knows how to build you a house, and then go make an arrangement to make that goal happen. If you want to make $1 million, you need to get off your butt and go do something to get it. Now, that activity could be anything from robbing a bank to any kind of honest employment. And the Tao will not take an emotional, invested attitude in your activities. If you decide to rob banks to become a millionaire, those actions have consequences, and the Tao will smile down upon you, just as it does the person who works for 20 or 30 or 40 years to become a millionaire. You know, neither of you will be seen as more inadequate than the other in the eyes of the great Tao of heaven. But in this existence, our actions have consequences, and if you choose to rob a bank to become a millionaire, you may be shot by a cop. For the sake of liability mitigation, I am not suggesting that anybody go rob a bank to become a millionaire. Let's be real clear on that one. However, that little introductory segue there is precisely the purpose for this talk, which is know thyself. In chapter 33 of the Daodejing, Lao Zi says, those who understand others are intelligent, those who understand themselves are enlightened. I usually get this chapter wrong, even though it's one of my personal favorites, so this time I wrote it down while I was looking at it. In chapter 71, Lao Tzu says, to know you do not know is the highest. To not know but think you know is flawed. Every single one of us, when I read that, I absolutely know, has a little jump in our hearts because either we've done that or we know somebody who has, or both. Sun Tzu in The Art of War, the euphemistic title, the one everybody recognizes. If you know yourself and you know your opponent, you need not fear the outcome of 100 battles. These three statements are all very brief repetitions of an incredibly important truth. And the incredibly important truth is that we absolutely must know ourselves at a very deep and very intimate level. The mastery of the self is what allows us to approach mastery of the Tao teachings. And all of the Tao teachings that I talk about here, every single one of them, I try to tie down to walking the path of this life, to situations that we all encounter, to day-to-day examples in living and working and getting along with our families and co-workers and people we don't know. Because at the end of the day, the beginning of spiritual mastery starts with mastering our day-to-day walk through life. It starts with knowing ourselves, with understanding ourselves, and then with refining and improving upon that self that we look at in the mirror. Not the self that we show to everybody else, but the self that we see when we look in the mirror, the self that I pray to everything I hold holy, we all know is the truth. The person who looks in the mirror and sees something that they are not is a person who is truly lost. This is such a big deal that it permeates through every spiritual tradition that I've ever seen, and through an awful lot of philosophical paths that have nothing to do with spiritualism, military strategy and tactics, politics, business, social interaction, all secular topics, and all dependent upon intimate self-knowledge and the ability to guide and direct the mind and master the self. As a long-time practitioner of martial sciences, I can tell you all that the very first step in mastering the martial sciences is mastering the self. We discipline the mind and train and condition the body to free the spirit. Now, in the West here, the free the spirit part has very largely been lost, which is a shame. An awful lot of martial schools here in the West don't have anything to do with teaching the spirituality that went hand in hand with many of the Asian martial sciences. I am a remarkably rare exception there because I absolutely insist that my students understand the Tao philosophy, without which they cannot master Tai Chi Chuan. It isn't possible. It isn't that I'm proselytizing or trying to create converts, but in order for my students to understand the nature and essence of Tai Chi Chuan, they must understand the philosophy from which it originated. Japanese karate originally was rooted in Buddhist and Shinto spirituality. The word samurai means servant. And the 32 pathways to enlightenment that are the code of Bushido, the way of the warrior, as it's known here, were all pathways to spiritual enlightenment. Ieido and Kendo, the discipline of the sword, was not just a mechanical fighting discipline. It was a spiritual and mental discipline. The samurai believed that the soul of the warrior lived in the long sword, that it was part of him. Swords were imbued with spiritual significance. And before really important battles and that sort of thing, very often that spiritual significance was inscribed in the blade when the sword was made. It was a single-minded focus on a single-minded purpose, a complete and utter commitment to one single discipline. And every aspect of that lifestyle in that period, that is, the people who farmed the land, the people who manufactured the weapons, the samurai themselves, the people who attended to them, all approached what they did with that kind of single-minded precision and discipline. Because those things have largely been lost in the West, it is extremely difficult to actually master those disciplines here in the West. There are some places that teach those skills, not a lot. And like my school, they tend to be very small and pretty isolated. And they don't advertise. They don't have to. They're kind of hard to find. But they're definitely worth finding. I digress. When I consider the end of my life, when I think about the day that I finally lay down and close my eyes and hands for the last time, I truly do not want my last thought to be, gee, I wished I'd have done, and fill in the blank. I don't want to die with a heart and mind full of regrets and wishes and unaccomplished things. So how do we go about avoiding that? And why is that important, and what does that have to do with knowing oneself? Now, we'll get there, and hopefully in 15 minutes or less. One avoids that fate precisely by the same discipline I just got done discussing, by using the process of absolutely brutally honest introspection, by truly knowing oneself. Part of the Yiguan Dao discipline, if we are going to practice this philosophy seriously, and I do, I'm not saying I get it right every time. In fact, I fall down probably a lot more often than I actually succeed. But I keep getting up and trying again. And I'm not afraid to fall down. I've fallen down before. Part of this wonderful discipline, part of this wonderful spiritual path is that process of brutally honest introspection and self-knowledge in order to refine the spirit, in order to bring about the the emergence of the true self in this world from an otherwise really rough and unpolished human being, myself, requires the process of self-examination that helps me to get rid of the things that don't work, the beliefs that aren't right, the education and things that I've thought over my life that are incorrect or only partially correct, and the refining and mastery and divination of the things that are true, those golden nuggets of wonderful truth, and the implementation of those truths to the benefit of my existence on this planet. I'm referring to myself, but that's because I don't want to point the finger at people generally speaking when it comes to this stuff. Understand that this process is something we all need to be doing. This is the process of mental and spiritual refinement. Whether or not one follows the martial path or not, this is how it's done. This is what differentiates us from the church of what's happening now and everybody else out there who says you can visualize a Cadillac. You can't. The process is to truly understand why there is a desire for the Cadillac and if it is appropriate to take the steps necessary to acquire it. We all have wishes and desires and hopes and dreams and some attachments out there. And we hang on to those things because they have value to us. If we do not understand why we attach the value to them, then we don't truly understand their place in our lives. Once we understand why we attach the value to them, then we can decide whether or not they're appropriate. And if they are, then we can take the appropriate steps to accomplish whatever those wishes and desires are. In short, if we do not know ourselves, we cannot ever truly be happy. We're always chasing a hole in our hearts that we can't ever fill up because we don't know how. Every spiritual tradition in existence contains some kind of passages regarding self-knowledge and understanding. They all do. Usually in the context of some kind of metaphysical or spiritual commitment, or a commitment to some kind of a particular path or belief system. In a lot of traditions, there's a mystical transformation that occurs somewhere. It's the box on the flow chart that says, and then a miracle happens that results in the transformation of individuals into what they ought to become spiritually and secularly. But they're a little vague on exactly how that mystical transformation occurs. In the Tao tradition, I can tell you, there absolutely is a box on the flow chart that says, and then a miracle occurs. I've been through that box more than once. I get stuck through it fairly frequently as I study these teachings. And there is a transformative process that I consider to be nothing short of miraculous. But the miraculous process occurs at the back end of a lot of study and practice and training and education and self-introspection and making a lot of mistakes and falling down a bunch and trying it again. That's one of my most repetitive and recurring themes as I talk to you guys, is the understanding that there's no mastery of these disciplines, usually without a lot of falling down and getting back up. And I'm not immune to that. But there seems to be a certain amount of latitude within the Tao philosophy for those of us that are trying. And I can't really explain it or describe it. And I've stopped questioning it. I just know that it occurs. And it occurs precisely and regularly as the teachings are applied, so much so that I say with a good deal of frequency that this is the only spiritual path I've ever seen where you can evaluate the results using the scientific method. And that statement is held up for 20, 25 years now. Long time. That's pretty doggone spectacular. But the reason that happens is because the process is predicated on the self-knowledge of the practitioners, and the folks that practice this discipline seriously understand that and go through that process very regularly. We can never truly commit to anything unless we understand ourselves thoroughly. Once again, the question of why this commitment has value becomes important. What is it that we hope to gain from the commitment we're about to make? We absolutely ask that question when we're getting ready to sign a mortgage or a car loan. If you're going to spend a couple $100,000, you sure want to know why you're going to do it. Very frequently, when we examine our own spiritual path and our path through this existence, we ask a lot less questions, a lot less rigorously. But in my mind, that spiritual path through this life is a whole bunch more important. And sometimes our most closely held beliefs and values turn out to be just dead wrong. Every now and again, we are the person who doesn't know, but thinks he does. You know? And it's up to us to discover when that's the case. When we're that person who doesn't know but thinks they do. And to correct our thinking. To not know and know you don't know is where the flaw gets corrected. And that extends to cover mistaken thinking and closely held beliefs that somebody told us when we were kids that we never questioned until about now. To intentionally hold on to an erroneous belief system or value, to intentionally hang on to mistaken or erroneous thinking is the greatest flaw there is in human nature. That is the root of all prejudices. It is the root of all ignorance. And it is the absolute antithesis of forward progress on a spiritual path. We all know folks that grate on our nerves due to some of their more interesting personality traits, right? There's the loud, boorish, bellicose guy. What I used to be, the know-it-all, the fidgets, right? The people who are completely insensitive and unaware of the fact that in a cube farm there are 30 other people within 20 feet of them, where they talk so loud on the phone that you can't hear yourself think. Stuff like that. Right? And we're real quick to point the finger at those folks, but how often do we check ourselves to see if we're one of those people? You know, a couple of years ago, we had a thing happen at the office where somebody was in a restaurant here in town talking about the damage they could inflict on our company and all the bad, horrible, nasty things they could do to one of their kids and how important they were and just huffing and puffing and blowing all over. And the first thing I thought when I heard about that, and it was published actually at work because it was kind of a big deal. You know, it was taken seriously. The very first thing that I thought when I heard about it was, gee, could that have possibly been me? The second thing I did was that I asked the guys I work with, hey, have you guys ever heard me sound like this? I was pretty sure it wasn't, but man, I wanted to be sure. I even did a talk on it. You know, there was a time in my life where I tended to get a little heated and a little loud both. I used to say my favorite manner of problem resolution was to kick the door in with both guns blazing. How arrogant. It's the height of hubris. And I used to believe that was the right way to handle things. I'm much softer now. But I went and asked, how else do we find out if it's us? When we're not paying attention to what's going on around us, how do we know we're not the guy drumming the desk so loud that nobody else can think? We're shaking the ice in their plastic glass so that we get to enjoy the maraca sounds for 8 hours. Stuff like that will drive you to the point of homicide. But if it's us, if we don't ask, we don't know. And nobody will tell you. Part of refining our spiritual path is establishing that genuine understanding and knowing the truth, even if the truth is not the truth we wanted to hear. See, here's the thing. We have to interact with other people in this world, and a lot of the people we have to interact with don't know themselves real well, and further may not want to. And many are perfectly happy in whatever their particular delusions and beliefs are, and be that as it may, we can't change it. So we need to know for ourselves what the truth is. I'm not talking about shades and variations on empirical truth. I'm talking about our perception of spiritual truth and our spiritual path in a secular world to the best of our knowledge. And we need to strive every day to improve on and expand our knowledge of that truth as best we can. I really hope that none of us arrives at our time to die with a heart full of regrets and wishes and unrealized dreams because we didn't take the time to go through that process. The only way to really avoid that is by truly knowing ourselves. I sure hope something I said today was useful, and thank you guys so much for letting me share with you.
Let's go ahead and do the meeting ending ritual, everybody. 起立，面向佛堂，持架深鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，持架各位顶传十一鞠躬，斜翻一鞠躬。We're done, everybody. Thank you so much.